behind closed doors. I'm a fool for your love.
Hello everyone, my name is Anthony and welcome back to the Anthony James Show here on Sports Fan Entertainment. I decided this week to talk about the NBA. I don't talk about it nearly enough on my own channel, and I see a lot of you want to hear about the NBA, and maybe you don't want to hear about it from me, but I'm going to give you my thoughts on the NBA and their current MVP. Who is going to be the MVP this year? Because it's not like last year where a lot of people assumed it would be Steph Curry. It was Steph Curry, rightfully so. But this year, you can make an argument for really just a couple guys. I know Kawhi Leonard, LeBron James are always thrown into the conversation. But I'm not going to make arguments for either of them. I think you would have to make very, very good arguments for either of those players to be considered the MVP. I'm a LeBron fan, but I don't think he's the MVP. I don't think Kawhi Leonard's the MVP. And while I saw James Harden just said that, hey, it should go by wins, if that's the case, then why isn't Kawhi Leonard going to be the MVP? It's more than just wins. So really, there's just two players, and it's obvious who these two players are that should be considered MVP, at least that you can make an argument for. And while I think it's not as close as what it was a month ago, it's still somewhat close. And with all that being said, let's get into it. I was looking up a USA Today article that should hopefully be in the description of this video if you want to check out yourself. But it's a lot of stats. It's about a week old now, but there's still a lot of good information in this video. As of today, Westbrook, he just got his 42nd triple-double of the season. That is the record for a season in the NBA. So that's just helping his case. He's already added up that he can get a triple-double average throughout the season. That's just amazing. But let's look at Russell Westbrook first. There's a lot to like about him. For one, he sees his partner in crime, Kevin Durant, leave. I mean, I have a friend who is a Thunder fan, and I asked him, I'm like, who's the better player between the two? This is when Durant was still on the team. And he's like, it's like a 1A, 1B. It's hard to really say which one's better. And coming into the season, I think a lot of Thunder fans could have been under the impression that, hey, this might be our last season with Westbrook. He might want to leave too, especially with Durant gone. But he's instead made a name for himself, and he's averaging a triple-double. First player since Oscar Robertson. And I know you guys already know that, but I just need to remind you, he's averaging a triple-double, which is just unheard of in the NBA. It's been over 50 years since that's been done. That's just amazing when you look at it. And as I look through some of these stats, here's one from basketballreference.com that they reference. He is the fourth best value over replacement player figure in league history, which is 11.52. That is only behind Michael Jordan in 88, 89, and 87, 88, and LeBron James in 09 through or 08 through 09. Currently, Harden's is 8.45. Take that what it is, you know. That's at least something to point out. When you look at him, his usage percentage by a player while he's still on the floor is an all-time high 41%. And before Durant left town, it was 31.8%, which was last season. And so that's up almost 10%. Harden is fourth this season at 34.1. Which is worth pointing out. Thunder have the ninth best defensive ranking in the NBA, and they are better on that end with Westbrook when he's on the floor. 104.5 points allowed per 100 per 100 possessions when he plays compared to 107 when he doesn't. So a little bit worse when he's off. Now, those are some stats I just want to bring up about him. Now let's look at James Harden, who he's done a pretty good job himself. The Rockets, who were an 8th seed in the West last season, are, as of this, 52 and 25, a third place in the Western Conference. So a huge improvement from last year when you look at that. He missed the first game of the season, but other than that, he's been playing. So let's look at it. He's been has his own history too. He averaged, at least as of this, 29 points, 11 assists, and 8 rebounds per game for an entire season, which is just rare. You don't see that by many players. It's just, you look at these stats, He can tally 49 assists. If he can tally but 49 assists by the end of the season, then he'd be the first player in NBA history to finish a regular season with 2,000 points, 900 assists, and 600 rebounds, which when you're talking about triple doubles, that's a nice little stat to have himself. So you look at both of these players, and I can see the arguments made as why James Harden should be the MVP. He's had a very good season, and unfortunately for him, I think if this was a couple years ago, he would have been MVP. Uh, Maybe not so much last year, but you have two very good players right now putting up great numbers. And I see a lot of people say, well, with Russell Westbrook, Robertson, when he did it, well, he wasn't the MVP. He averaged a triple double, and he was not the MVP. And I can see an argument made for that, but here's the deal. I'm going to take the NFL and use a comparison here. As a Vikings fan, I remember this a few years ago when AP won the MVP, and they were discussing should he win the MVP or not after rushing for over 2,000 yards. Second most rushing yards ever by an NFL player in a season. But you look at the guy who was ahead of him, Eric Dickerson. He has the record. He still has the record today for the most rushing yards in a season, but he did not win the MVP that season. AP did his season that he had almost the record, but Eric Dickerson didn't, and that's kind of what the situation is here. You see Oscar Robertson, he didn't do it, but Russell Westbrook has the ability to do so. And I look at these two players. I think if James Harden is the MVP, I think that's a good MVP. I think if Russell Westbrook is the MVP, that's a good MVP. But when you compare these two players, and if I get to choose who should be MVP, it's just so obvious to me why, Russell Westbrook should be the MVP. I think that James Harden could be a good MVP, but when you compare him to Russell Westbrook, what he's been able to do for this team is just outstanding. He's brought this team to the playoffs in a tougher Western Conference. And I can tell you this, and I think a lot of people would agree with me with this statement, that without Russell Westbrook, this team would not be a playoff team. This team would be competing for the first pick in the NBA draft. They wouldn't be competing for a playoff spot, which they're already in, and they wouldn't be competing to maybe make some noise in the playoffs, depending on what happens. That's because of Russell Westbrook, and people will say he is padding his stats. Well, what does he want to finish with? No zero, a triple zero? Like, no, he doesn't want to do that. He wants to get points. He wants to get rebounds. He wants to do all that, which is obvious. This man's averaging a triple double, and I think at the end of the day, that alone should seal it up for him. That really should. If a player can average a triple double in a season, that is just amazing. That is outstanding. And as an NBA fan, whether you like the Thunder or not, you should at least appreciate that, because who knows the next time we'll see that. He broke the record now for triple doubles in a season. Those two deals, even if he could just do one of them and he was able to do both of them, that's just outstanding to me. And like I said, who knows the next time we'll see this by an NBA player. And I look at James Harden's. The deal with him is, like I said, he could be a good MVP, but please keep this in mind that without him, I think the Rockets would still be a pretty good team. They wouldn't be as good as they are, obviously, but they could still be a playoff team. I think without Russell Westbrook, it's obvious this team would not be a playoff team. They win most of the games, he gets a triple-double. So I look at these two players. They both have reasons as to why they could be MVP, but I look at them. Russell Westbrook's are just so much bigger and so much more important as to why he should be MVP than James Harden. And I think people are more and more starting to realize that. I still see people doubting, and I can understand why, but I think you just need to look at it, respect what Russell Westbrook has done this season, and realize that he should be the NBA MVP. At least that's how I view it. I'll be honest, I don't follow the NBA as closely as I do the NFL, but when I look at it, it just is obvious to me. He has the characteristics I love in an MVP, that without him, this team would not be as good by a long shot, and he's doing great stat-wise. Those two characteristics, it's hard to get both of them, and he has both of them. That's why, to me, Russell Westbrook should be the MVP for the NBA this season. Tell me if you disagree or agree in the comments. I'd love to hear your opinions. If you're new to me, you can follow me on Twitter at AnthonyJamesT. TV link in the description. You can subscribe to my channel, Anthony James TV. I make NFL videos, especially on that channel, and I'll try to do some NBA videos. Depending on how people like this video, I might start to do more. We'll see how that goes.
Behind closed doors, I'm a fool for your love.